really getting so much into the actual book. So I was thinking it would be good we could do, have like a little summary of the Bhagavad-gita, which usually I do, it takes a little bit longer than an hour for sure, but we can just go at a slower pace. And then after we get into it, there'll be sections where we can actually open the Bhagavad-gita, look at it a little bit, and have some discussion if everyone's okay with that. Yeah?
Yeah, sounds good.
So I think most everyone was here for the previous sessions, except for Vishani. And David was there, I think, for some of them, right?
Yeah, for a few of them, yeah.
Yeah. So in the beginning, because we're going to start again back at chapter 1, and we'll do a little bit of a setting of the scene and an introduction and everything like that. And then everyone has a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. Vishani, do you have a copy of the Gita? Okay, no problem. Vrishni will arrange one to arrive at your door in the next. Yes, Vrishni?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
did you? Yeah, we'll try to get one to you before the next session, okay, Vishani?
No problem.
But,
Just message me your number.
Yeah. So we might not get so into it in this first, but we'll do a little bit of a review, and everyone can, if you have the book, then please have it handy. Do I have permission to share my screen?
Yeah, should do.
Nope.
No, Michelle.
Okay, here we go. Okay, just
No, I think.
section.
Yep.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it's there are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and these sessions are set up to cover 3 each, so it usually takes 6 sessions, but usually it's kind of a 2-hour session. So we're not going to worry so much about time. The main thing is that we move, and if anyone has any questions at any point, then interject and ask your question. You don't have to raise your hand because I might not necessarily see it, but just say, wait, stop. You're driving me crazy, please. And I am confused. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita as it is, we did discuss a little bit before in the previous session, but the Gita that we're looking at is the Gita by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who translated many volumes of books from Sanskrit, ancient texts from India of Vedic wisdom, and translated those into the English language, somewhere around 60 to 70 volumes of different books. The Bhagavad Gita, of course, is appreciated by personalities like Mahatma Gandhi. We discussed, he used to read that regularly. Also, surprisingly, for many people, Albert Einstein also used to read the Bhagavad Gita and would quote the Bhagavad Gita from time to time. Put a section in here with objectives, but we'll just quickly go through that. It's just to gain a general understanding, to look at some of the topics of reincarnation and the soul, yoga, meditation, to get some inspiration from the Gita, to understand some practical application from the Gita, and to get some insights how current global changes or challenges can be faced with spiritual wisdom. Rough outline of the course or the topics that we may be discussing if we manage to get through them all. So these are the different chapters and how we would work through those. So we'll start with the intro, which the first chapter is more of an introduction. Then there's second chapter is an overview of the entire Bhagavad Gita. That's why it's called Summary summary of the Bhagavad-gita, contents of the Gita summarized. And then the third chapter starts to speak about yoga, and it discusses a principle of karma yoga. Sorry, let me just get a little more comfortable. Okay, so everyone's still with me? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Marcella, you haven't fallen asleep yet on that couch? No, got to keep an eye out for you guys over there. All right.
All good.
All right. So you remember last time we looked at kind of where the Bhagavad Gita sits amongst the Vedic texts. Now, some people are very familiar with this. Some people get into yoga and meditation. They start to realize the depth of knowledge and wisdom that is available from ancient India, from the wisdom of the sages. And this goes back, we won't get into this too much, but we could give a whole talk just on the differences between the Shruti, the Smriti, which is that which is spoken and that which was written, basically, in essence. Way back in the days of the great sages, they could speak in one session 700 verses in Sanskrit. And there were persons, because their minds were so tuned in, they could hear 700 verses and they could remember all 700 of them without any problem. And they were known as Shrutidars, people who could hear once and remember. So most of us have the problem remembering even what happened to us 20 minutes ago or yesterday, what to speak of hearing an entire lecture in university and going away and remembering and being able to repeat back everything the lecturer was saying. I was preparing a class earlier today and I was listening to a talk by one of my favorite speakers, and I was listening, and then after like 5 minutes, I realized I love everything he said, but I can't remember anything that he said. I just remember I like it. So then I had to go back and get out my, electronic, paper, and I had to stop every 2 seconds and just make notes of what he said. So our founder, the author of the Bhagavad Gita we're reading through, he made this statement that it's very difficult in this age and time that we live in to remember. He said, but if you want to remember, you only have to remember one thing. And often people say, what is that one thing? And he said, you just have to remember to write it down. So if you remember to write it down, then you can always look at it later. If you don't make any notes, you don't write it down, then it's going to be easy to escape you. Of course, these days we have so many gadgets and devices, we have to remember where we wrote it down. Of course, that's probably what we forget. So this is, you can see down here, the Bhagavad Gita is situated under the Smritis, but it's also considered a Shruti. And it comes from a famous book called the Mahabharata. And it's actually a section within the Mahabharata. Is anyone familiar with the Mahabharata? Anyone's heard of the Mahabharata? Okay. Well, it's an amazing story. It's kind of like, I'll show you a slide later. It's like the best soap opera ever, You couldn't believe the intrigue and politics and so many things that go on in the Mahabharata. It's very enticing. But the Bhagavad Gita is like the jewel of the Mahabharata. It's right in the middle of the Mahabharata. So first thing we're going to do is eat, okay? Because it's important to eat. Actually, the Bhagavad Gita, if we look at it, it's 18 chapters, and we can divide it into 3 sections of 6. And in that way, some of our great teachers and the sages from ancient India, they describe the Bhagavad Gita as like a sandwich. And there's 2 pieces of bread, and then you have the filling. So in that way, they describe that the first 6 chapters, which is down here, this discusses primarily karma yoga. And the middle 6 chapters discusses bhakti. And the last 6 chapters discuss gyan. So in this way, it creates a sort of sandwich. And most sandwiches are known for what's in the middle, because really the sandwich is all about what's in the middle. That's the most important part. So bhakti is really the most important part, and that's right in the middle. So this is the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. Everyone still with me? No one's fallen asleep yet?
No.
I think some people turned their screens off because they saw that sandwich and they got hungry, so they ran off to the kitchen. Okay, so setting the scene. So this is what chapter 1 does. Now, if everyone remembers last time, I mentioned to you about the Sanskrit in the Bhagavad Gita. So if you do have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, and I keep wanting to call you Vrishni, but Varshni, what is it?
Visani.
Visani, so it's not Vish, it's Vis, yes?
Yes, is Visani.
Perfect. And where is that from, Visani?
I'm from Thailand, originally from Thailand.
Really? Amazing. I have a very good friend who lives in, is it called Phuket?
Yes, Phuket, yes.
That's it, Phuket. Yeah, he's a very wonderful person. So when you get your book, you'll be able to see that the book has the actual original Sanskrit in it. Can you read Sanskrit?
No.
Yeah, Thailand is also the place of it's the oldest Hindu temple is there, right?
I think so. I'll be honest with you. My religion is Christian, but I've always been very open-minded to learn and listen from other religions. And in Thailand, most of the population is Buddhist. So I don't get the chance to go back home very often, but I had some experiences of actually spending night in the forest with monks, Buddhist monks in different regions of the country. And I didn't know what to do, but I just wanted to do some meditation, like a retreat. So I would just live with them actually. And I couldn't follow their prayers much, but I just used to meditate and walk around with them, but I don't know how to read these things now. And the reason why I've joined this session is I really enjoyed the yoga sessions, and I didn't know what to expect today, but I knew I would learn something out of it. That's why I joined. And yes, I have no idea what we're doing, so this is all in the same time new for me.
Okay.
But, yes, so yeah, here I am.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're happy to have you, of course. And I don't think anyone here can read this, to be honest, not even me. So it's okay. But you can learn the Sanskrit from the book, but you can see that here is the original Sanskrit, and this is what's known as the Roman transliteralization. So that turned the Sanskrit into Roman letters, which means for those of us who read English, you can then read that. So this is the same as that, just in Roman letters. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Basically, I'm just trying to demystify the Bhagavad Gita a little bit, because sometimes when we first get the book, it can be a little overwhelming. So this turns into looking like this. And so the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita reads, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, Dharma Kshetre Kuru Kshetre, Samaveta Yuyutsavaha, Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. So, although I can't read this, but I can read that. So it takes a little bit of practice, because you have these things here, like you don't normally get this in English. You can see my cursor on the screen, right?
Yes.
So like this line over the A, or the dot under the R, or the dot under the S and T and under the H. So these all have a meaning, but there's a Sanskrit pronunciation guide in the back of the book, so you can look at that and understand. But for the most part, what we'll probably look at is this, because this here is the English translation of this. But the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Prabhupada that I showed in the beginning, he's translated it to keep the authenticity of the translation, so that anyone who actually can read Sanskrit can see that he's clearly translated the book kind of in accordance with what the original is. So the verse says, Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So this is the very first verse of this book, the Bhagavad-gita. And the Bhagavad-gita, as we discussed in the previous sessions, literally it means the song of Bhagavan, and Bhagavan means God. So this book is actually called the Song of God. Because if you pronounce this Sanskrit properly, although I read it, you would actually sing it. Dhritarashtra vacha dharmik kshetre kurukshetre samaveda yuyutsavaha mama kapandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So actually all of the verses are sung. They have a meter and they're actually sung in this way. So it's a song in one sense. The entire 700 verses is like a song. So it's called the Song of God. So, and we can see that the opening verse is beginning to set the scene for us. So there's a person whose name is Dhritarashtra, and he's speaking to someone named Sanjay, and he's talking about his sons, and then he's talking about the sons of someone named Pandu, and how they gathered together at a place of pilgrimage, which means a holy place that's called Kurukshetra, and they were going to fight. So considering this is a holy book, and actually the Bhagavad-gita is known as the source book for all knowledge on yoga, meditation, karma, reincarnation, and aspects of spirituality. And here we have this thing that these people are gathering together in order to fight. So let's just discover a little bit about who these persons are. So some of the different characters in the Bhagavad-gita. Here, this is Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra is the king. He's the king in this scene. So he's the king, but there's an interesting thing about this king. He's actually blind, and he was born blind. And even though he's the eldest son and he should have been the king, but because he was born blind, it disqualified him for being the king. So therefore, his younger brother named Pandu was initially considered to be the king, because that's the way it works in the royal order. He was more qualified because he wasn't blind. But what happened is that Pandu, his younger brother, he passed away at an early age, and his sons weren't old enough to take over the kingdom. So Dhritarashtra stepped, and he more or less ruled the kingdom for 12 years. Now, Dhritarashtra has a very close associate, and his name is Sanjay. And Sanjay is a mystic, which means that Sanjay has like ESP, or an extrasensory perception. He has the ability to be able to see things that are happening far away, and he helps Dhritarashtra understand what's going on by conveying to him what is happening. So he is like, you know, sometimes I forget what era it is. I guess it's King Arthur. So in the times of King Arthur, he had a magician, right? And I know, what's that famous movie with they have goblins and they have all these things. It's like this famous big movie.
The Lord of the Rings.
The Ring. Oh my God, you know, I couldn't remember
Is
it.
Yeah.
It's like in Lord of the Ring, you have sorcerers, you have all this. So, you know, all of these things are there. Of course, the Bhagavad-gita is spoken thousands and thousands of years ago. But in the same way that you have like someone like Merlin the magician, Sanjay is kind of like that. He's a mystic, and that's what the magicians actually are. They're not magicians like cheaters. They're actually persons who have mastered mystical powers. So like that. So this is who Sanjay is. Now, Dhritarashtra's oldest son, his name is Duryodhana, and he's the eldest prince, and he really wants to be the king. And he knows that once his cousins, the sons of Pandu, once they come of age, they're going to become, one of them, Yudhisthira, he's going to become the king. And Duryodhana doesn't want any of that because he's the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, and he feels it is his rightful claim to have the kingdom. So he's kind of like the bad guy in the story, if you will. So Duryodhana is like, he's doing whatever he can to try to get rid of the Pandavas so that they have no chance of becoming the king and so that he can take the kingdom. Now, we may talk about this as like a story, old time story, but we see this kind of thing going on every day in the world that we live in, even now. What to speak of, even in first world country called America, where people stormed the White House in order to, you know, claim victory for someone who lost according to democracy. So all kinds of things like this are going on. Now, Duryodhana has a few brothers. In fact, he has 100 brothers, or 99 brothers, of which he is the oldest. Yes, yes, ma'am, he has a lot of brothers. Imagine the mother. Woo, good Lord. So for us, we may think these things are a little impractical or unreal, but we think if you have 5 brothers or sisters these days, that's too much. But my mother, she has 12 brothers and sisters. So it's not uncommon in years and times going by that families were much, much bigger. And even still in other countries, not so much in the West where you have, what is it, 2.5 children. I think that's the average. It might even be going down. But still in other countries, 5 or 6, 7, 8 children is not an uncommon thing. So anyway, these 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, the blind king, they kind of represent the forces of evil in the Bhagavad-gita because their whole intention is that they want the kingdom, although the kingdom isn't really rightfully theirs. The kingdom really belongs to the Pandavas, who are the sons of Pandu. And he only had 5 sons, so that should make you feel a little bit better, ladies. You know, only five sons there. So they're called Yudhisthira, Bhima, Arjun, and Nakul and Sahadev. So they more or less represent the force of goodness in the Bhagavad-gita. So we really set up a scene of good versus evil, which is, again, not an uncommon thing. It doesn't just happen in fairy tales. We can see it on the television and in the newspapers, on the internet every day. We can see it around us in our own environments. And even more, if we look closely, we can see it happening within us. There's a battle between good and evil often going on within our own hearts. So this battle is not something that is uncommon for us to see. It's a perpetual battle every day. Some people, the biggest battle for them every day is just to get out of bed, right? You know, it's like, you know, there's the little voice that says, oh, just 5 more minutes, just 5 more minutes. It's so cold now. And then the other voice is like, no, you should get up. You have schoolwork to do. You're going to be late for class. And then the other, no, just sleep, right? Anyone has that? Am I the only person who struggles with these voices in the head? Okay, good. So like this, there's always a battle between good and evil. So the star of the show, or one of the main stars of the show, is Arjuna. So he's one of the Pandavas, one of the 5 brothers, and he's a great warrior. In fact, he is an amazing warrior. He's recognized as the greatest archer of his time. And he is the person who, even though his whole life has been about training and preparing for war, as what's known, you know, he's like from the kingly class, so they're known as Kshatriyas or natural warriors. even though he's prepared his whole life to defend righteousness and dharma, during the course of the Bhagavad-gita, he's going to have a lot of questions, and his questions are going to be very relevant and pertinent to all of us. And he is really the catalyst for the Gita, the Bhagavad-gita, to be spoken. He has a grand uncle, and his name is Bhishma, and he's actually considered a really, really righteous person, but somehow he winds up on the opposite side. He winds up on the side of the Kauravas, which means that Arjuna is going to have to fight against him. And Arjuna has really deep affection and love for him because he's helped to raise them after his father passed away. It was really Bhishma who looked after all of them. So he has a deep love. But because Bhishma has a sense of honor and he is dedicated to whoever is sitting on the throne, then he's obliged to fight on the side of the king. So there's a lot of ideas of what could be considered justice and morality, and so many principles like this that are discussed in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad-gita. Another personality is Drona. He is the teacher or the guru of all of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. So the Pandavas, this is their teacher, and he has taught them everything they know about warfare. And he also has an obligation to the throne. So he also finds himself on the opposing side. So both of these persons are fighting against the Pandavas. So they, even though they're good persons, but sometimes we may find, even though we're good people, we find ourselves in situations maybe having to do things that we think aren't really correct, aren't really right. Has anyone ever found themselves doing that? Like, or you might know someone, because you all seem so good, you would never find yourselves doing anything wrong. I'm sure you're all like pure angels from the spiritual world. But, you know, but sometimes you might know people who like, no, they're good. Why are they doing this? You know, and that's the way it works sometimes. So these kind of topics also come up in the Gita. So one of the real star of the show in the Gita is Krishna. And Krishna is considered the supreme personality of Godhead. But he's seen differently by different persons, which means that actually he is a manifestation of God who is present on the battlefield. And he actually takes the role of being the chariot driver of Arjuna, which is an interesting concept, because it means that God, he can become subservient to his devotee. So someone who is fully dedicated and devoted to serving God, God is so enamored and attracted by that person that he will actually take a position that's subservient to his devotee. So it's actually considered quite a profound concept in theology. And like I said, the Bhagavad-gita is studied by many, many scholars, and many of the topics that I'm discussing now, I'm just literally skating on the surface of deep, really profound philosophical and theological ideals or ideologies, so like that. So Krishna and Arjuna are cousins, and they're roughly the same age, and they're peers. But somehow Krishna has decided to take the role of being the chariot driver of Arjuna, which is more of a menial role. And he gives Arjuna, who is the warrior, the right to be the person guiding the chariot, and he just listens to him. So this is something, I won't get into this too much, but this is the family tree here that leads to the Pandavas. So here's Pandu, and this is his wife Kunti, and she has these 3 children, and then he has a second wife, Madri, and those are the other 2 children. And then you see Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Duryodhana, and 99 sons, and then he has another wife, and he has 1 son, Yuyutsava, and this is kind of the family lineage. So one thing that's important to remember is that actually the Bhagavad-gita is not a story the Bhagavad-gita is what's known amongst the Vedic texts as an itihasa. That's the Sanskrit term for history. So an itihasa is a history. So this is a genealogical table, which is an actual traceable table, historical table. Just like if you go to, what is that? There's these websites now you can go to, like familytree.com or something like that. I can't remember the names of them. But you can trace out your family history back like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10 generations. So this is also a traceable table. And in India, there are many people who can trace their lineage all the way back 5,000 years to some of these people. So it is not mythology or mythical story. Kurukshetra, the place where this battle took place, it did take place. It is an actual place in India. It's considered a holy place or a place of pilgrimage. And you can go there and visit and see the place and see where the battle took place. So all of this is a history. It's not actually a mythical story. Okay. Everyone still with me so far? Anyone fell off the wagon? No? Okay. Want to make sure where I need to look for. Okay. Ellie's blacked us out. Okay. All right. So here we are. This is the kind of, how do you say? This is the scene. This visual here is the archetypal visual scene of the Bhagavad Gita being spoken. So we're at the start of the conversation with this of the Bhagavad Gita, and it's a discussion that we can relate to. What you have here is, this is Krishna, and this is Arjuna. So, and this is the two sides. So this is Arjuna's side, and this is the opposing army. And it's described that there were millions, literally millions of people who gathered for this fight. And in the middle of it, right before the fight was about to begin, Arjuna asked Krishna, his chariot driver, to take him into the middle of the two armies. And he said, I want to see who is on the opposing side, who's come to fight against us. I want to see who my enemy is. And Krishna knew what was going to happen, because he knew that although Arjuna is a great warrior, but his heart is very, very soft. He's actually a gentleman, a true gentleman. And he knew that once he sees who's on the opposing side, he's going to have challenges. And that's what happened. And as soon as Arjuna started to look at the opposing side, he saw his cousins, that although they had ill intentions for him, but he only had love and respect for them. He saw his grandfather, great uncle Bhishma. He saw his teacher, Drona, and he became overwhelmed with grief. And he basically got down off the chariot and he said to Krishna, that's it. I'm not going to fight, Krishna. I cannot fight this war when there's so many people on this battlefield that I love on both sides, and I'm putting everyone's life at risk. I cannot see the logic. It doesn't make religious or dharmic sense. And therefore, I would rather put my bow down and go to the forest like an ascetic, like a sage, like a sadhu, and just live in the forest and forget all of this. Interesting. Everyone's still with me? Everyone's on the edge of their seats like, yeah, what happened? What happened to Arjuna? Let me know. Tell me. Tell me. So
yeah, I was going to ask you that. Did he just go by himself, like completely isolate, alone?
well, this is an amazing point, because, and I'm not going to give it away now. I'm going to leave you with a cliffhanger, okay? God, my hands. Yeah, so there's 18 chapters to figure out, and we're still in the first chapter. So you're gonna have to come back again next week. What time is it? Yeah, we've only got 10 minutes. So if you're not here next week, then you're gonna, when you get the Bhagavad Gita, you're gonna be like, what? Where is it? Where does Arjuna decide what he's gonna do? So basically, as soon as Arjuna says this to Krishna, Krishna starts to give him some guidance and instruction. He starts to give him good counsel because he's a friend, but actually it's only when Arjuna decides that I am completely bewildered, Krishna, and I don't know what is the best thing for me to do. So I need you to give me good guidance. And then he accepts Krishna as his guru, as his teacher. And when he accepts him like this, then Krishna begins to instruct him. And these instructions are what make up the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. And they're instructive, not just for Arjuna, but they're instructive for us. Because, we're also, sometimes we feel unqualified to do something, right? You're all studying now, but I know many people who go for studies and they think, oh, I don't know if I'll be able to do it. Become a doctor, how many years will it take? Will I be able to pass all the grades? And, or to do anything, we may feel challenged. And if we're honest, sometimes we may even feel alone. We may not feel like, we feel like we're out there on our own and who's going to help me? And sometimes we get confronted by situations and circumstances and we just want to run away. Anyone here has ever wanted to run away from it all, right? Yes. We want to run away and lie on our couch with our little lamp next to our fountain and just give it all up, run to the forest and live with the monks, right? Because sometimes life, I remember when I was a teenager, about 150 years ago when I was a teenager, I just wanted, I was so sick of all the stuff that was going on in the world and, for family crisis, families arguing, bickering, going to school and dealing with the pressures of school and friends and girlfriends or, troubles, so many difficulties. And I remember I just wanted to take a djembe drum and go and live in the jungle. I remember when I was like 17, I thought one day I'm just going to live in the jungle and beat on my drum and chant. I didn't know what any of it meant and I didn't know why I wanted to do it. But ironically, probably about 10 years later, I became a monk and wound up living as a monk for 10 years, beating on a drum and chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So it was, somehow I knew I was meant for that kind of life. But we all have this propensity to run away, especially when we're challenged. So the first few times that I read through the Bhagavad Gita, the very first times, I was thinking that, yeah, Krishna's right. Arjuna's right. He should just leave. Forget this war. We want peace. We want love. We want joy and bliss. We don't want to fight. And then somehow I saw that Krishna seemed to be encouraging Arjuna that he should fight. And I thought, who's this crazy Krishna guy? He's some mad warmonger, just trying to encourage people to fight. And then how to tell this story without giving the ending away. No, I won't give the ending away. I will not. So I was struggling with the outcome of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's like that. Sometimes we don't know what to do. But what's really important, there's a saying that we should never make a decision from a place of weakness. We should never make a decision from a place of weakness. We should always try to make important decisions. Of course, every moment we're making decisions, but really important life-changing decisions should be made from a place of strength. Yes, because if we're in a weak situation, then we're overwhelmed by emotions and the mind is not clear, things aren't straight, and we may make a decision, a life-altering decision that doesn't really have the best impact for us. So we should always make a decision from a place of strength. And one way that we can get strength is by taking guidance, by getting advice and getting input from someone who's outside of us, who knows us, whom we trust, who really has a care or an affinity for us, and who we know will be honest with us and even tell us sometimes, stop acting like an idiot. You know, start, you know, act correct. They're not afraid to tell us the truth and be honest with us. We need that. So sometimes not sometimes, all the time really, we need to have good friends or good seniors or teachers or authorities or gurus or whatever you want to call around us who can help us to readjust our thinking so that we're like, yeah, why did I become so bewildered? I didn't think about it like that. Thank you. And then we have a place of strength from which we can make a decision. Everyone still with me? Okay. So that brings us just to lesson 1, and we'll conclude here because it's almost 7:30. Unless Vrishni tells me I've got another hour or two, and then I'll keep going until midnight because I like to talk. So lesson 1 is that one's greatness has to be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. Yeah, it's good, huh? So let's read it again. One's greatness has to be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking circumstances. Anyone here has ever met with a provoking circumstance? Yes? Vrishni, you're like going into fits of ecstasy there, laughing.
No, I just got reminded of something. That's why.
To share or not?
Maybe another day.
Likely we're all met by provoking circumstances in life. Now, if we're honest, you know, when we were together the first time, I had you keep a journal, and it's also good if you want to keep one this time, if anyone was inspired by that, then you can look at these lessons, because there are lessons throughout the session, and and we can see, how did I deal, or how have I dealt with provoking circumstances? Do I often rise to the challenge and figure out how to tolerate and deal with it? Or do I sometimes run away? Do I hide away from being the bigger person, or do I succumb to my lower nature? So these are challenges that we face in life, and really one's greatness can be determined by our ability to tolerate provoking circumstances. Because provoking, like if you look at this picture, I don't know if anyone has ever done any rock climbing. I used to do a lot of rock climbing when I was in my younger years, hundreds of years ago. And you know, when I saw this picture, I was thinking, I know that pain, because right now that person's forearms are like maxing out, and his fingers are probably like, because he's using chalk. You see there's a little bag back here full of chalk, and he uses, you can see there's a little bit of white on his hand. So you chalk up your hand, you tuck your hand in that bag and you put it in. Sometimes just to keep yourself on the wall, if there's a crack in the wall, you'll take your fingers and ram them into the wall, so that even if you fall off, your fingers will be locked in the wall, and even if you have to break your fingers, but you won't fall off the wall. So this kind of climbing, because this guy is not like on a 5-foot ledge, he's probably a good 100 or 200 feet up. So sometimes we really have to tolerate provocation in order to make progress and move forward. And sometimes it can feel very painful, but we have to learn to tolerate. And that's a whole session that I also have some you could say sessions that I teach about tolerance, because our understanding of tolerance often, you know, like I have a good friend once, and I was speaking with her, and she was telling me about someone who had upset her. And then she went, I've been tolerating them for 15 years. I was like, oh my God. And I said, I don't think that's called tolerance. I think that's called suppression. And you're probably going to get very sick if you keep doing this, you know? Because that's what people do. They think tolerance means to push it down and forget about it. But that's not what real tolerance is. But anyway, if you all are interested, we could do a talk also on tolerance or something like that. So you can just let Vrishni know. But it's not as simple as just pushing it down or forgetting about it. Oh, I'm tolerating. I just forget about it. Because we know most people don't really forget, you know. If you have anyway, yeah, you don't really forget. You find out that people haven't really forgotten about a month or two later when you say something that makes them remember, and then they go, you remember when you did this to me? And you're like, but I thought you forgot about it. I thought you were over it, you know? I'm over it, man. You know, it's like, no, you're not. You haven't dealt with it at all. You haven't tolerated anything. You haven't assimilated it. You haven't digested it. You haven't learned something from it and discarded it. You are still holding on to it like a hot coal, and it's just burning away like that. Anyway, sorry to be so graphic. I don't mean to be offensive or rude anyway. So like that. So anyway, this is where we'll stop today. So this is our first lesson from what we've read today. So if anyone has any questions or comments or reflections are also good, then any thoughts, anything? Isani, what do you think? Give us some deep revelations. We're looking for profundity. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Well, I did, but I didn't. I mean, it's kind of. Vishal, you're always good for a few.
You're on mute.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I will come up with something in a minute. Just give me a few minutes.
I think we want to know what happened to him.
Him who?
Arjuna. I'm so bad with names.
No, but that's why I said who.
Yeah. That's him, right?
Yeah, Arjuna. Well, that's good. If you want to know, then you either got to read the book in the next 2 weeks, or with me, I don't mind, or you have to come back for the next session.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I won't give away in the next session either. So 15 sessions, and I'm going to keep it. Ellie, any thoughts?
I just really like this kind of way that we're doing it, because I've got my little Bhagavad-gita here, and I keep trying to read it on my own, but I'm not a very good reader as it is. And then when I start reading it, I'm just like, I'm so lost. But it's one of those things where I really want to persevere with it, but I really like the way that we're doing it like this, kind of getting your wisdom on it and then reading back and going, oh yeah, that's what that meant.
Right.
Yeah, it's very helpful. Yeah.
I'm shuffling a new little course. Yeah.
And that's the point, because when I also first got the Gita, it was like, it was too much, especially all the names in the first chapter. Just, you know, who was it that said their heart, you know, yeah, Princess Leia.
Yeah, you called me Princess Leia last year because of my headphones. I don't forget. You see, I don't forget.
Oh, that's why then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put some Star Wars
I
background
saw a
next to it.
message asking, why is your name Princess Leia on Zoom?
Yeah, I looked
Oh,
at the participant
did
list and I was like,
see
who is
that.
Princess Leia? So I had to check. Like, is there someone I'm missing out here?
Yeah, I didn't even realise I was read it and went, yep, just accepted it. I didn't even notice.
I want to see if somebody will remember. I remember. Call me Princess Leia because he was making fun of my headphones.
Oh,
I had that blanket, you know, with sleeves on. So I guess that's why I look like Princess Leia.
Just
Started going, help me, Obi.
doppelganger.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's wonderful that we're able to read through, because it is difficult to gain access. So, but if we hear a little bit from someone who's already read it and they explain, then we get a little bit of an entrance into it. So I think probably if you read now the first, even probably up to like 30 verses of the first section, it will make some sense. You'll have some foundation of which things will, some things won't, but that's normal anyway. But you'll be like, oh, I get it. So this is that side. Now they're describing this side, and I know who Duryodhan is, and he's speaking now. So, it's kind of giving a context. So it's good like that. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Nothing? I feel like I've bored you all when you don't say anything at the end. It's like,
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
man, I wanted to count.
It's great because it's the sessions are very digestible,
Okay.
So I think it's so easy. The way you explain, it makes it feel so easy to understand and to actually see what's behind it. And the good thing is that, well, we're curious to know what's going to happen now. Right? It's the what's the name of the
Bharat, Bharata.
Is it the story of the whole war?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's again, the Mahabharata is, use the word itihasa in amongst the Vedic texts, and itihasa is a history. So it's a history of that. Remember I showed you that family diagram? The Mahabharata is kind of the history of that family.
Oh, okay.
That family lineage.
But must be a very long book.
It's God, I forget how many verses are there in the Mahabharata.
It's a big family.
No idea.
I can't remember now.
Well, we can ask Google.
Oh God, so ask Google. Yeah, I think it's something like 70,000 or something like that verses.
200,000.
200,000. Yeah. So the Bhagavad-gita is 700. So the Mahabharata is 200,000. And it's also
Wow.
it's also originally in Sanskrit, so it's also in verses.
Okay.
Like this is in verses. But there's a nice abridged version written by one of our kind of senior authors. His name is Krishna Dharma. And Vrishni can maybe share the link. You can get it on Apple Books or something like that. And it's good because, I mean, those who are really into it, they don't like the abridged version because you leave so much out. But for someone who's new, it's really good because, again, it's digestible. Again, there's a lot of names, and right off the bat, there's intense intrigue. When I first started reading it, I was like, what is going on here? This was like a spiritual program, man. This is like, in general, this one's sleeping with that one, this king is doing that, and that's going, whoa. But that's the setting of the scene anyway. And in one sense, later you realize that it's very good because it's quite relevant and pertinent to us, because these kind of things are also going on around us now. So it helps us to relate a little bit to the situation. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Thank you, Vrishni.
Oh, that's all right. I liked how like you went through all the different characters as well, because when I was reading Bhagavad-gita, I never gave much thought. I was just like, okay, let me just get into it and just start reading. But I never realized kind of the importance of each person in the whole scene and the impact that had.
I touched on a few of them. I mean, if you can imagine, we spoke about Duryodhan, he has 99. I mean, we don't know so much about all the others, but But when you read through the first part of the Bhagavad Gita, there's probably something like 25 or 30 different names that are mentioned. And for each of them, there's a long history that's explained. And because even though there's millions of people there for the battle, but there are more significant persons who've shown up, who are sometimes either the kings or the sons of kings from different dynasties. And there's an understanding of why they came to fight and which side they were on. And there's a whole background history to that. So it's kind of like, although it's not the best example, but like layers of an onion. You know, you can just keep peeling it back and back and back, and there's just more and more layers that, you know, you can always go deeper. And the Bhagavad Gita, no matter how many times you read through it, there will always be something new that comes out and something that's revealed, because this is the nature of spiritual literature or spiritual wisdom, that depending on the level with which you approach it, you go deeper. So like that. So the idea is that the more that we're able to, has anyone ever been scuba diving? Anyone's ever done any scuba diving? Okay, good. Thank you, Princess.
Oh.
Like this.
I think,
Have I?
yeah, no, because I was thinking, you was snorkeling, not scuba diving. How is snorkeling? So confused, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's like, I give that example sometimes that, like right now, what we're doing is we're kind of just putting on the flippers, you know, those flippers that you put on your feet to go in the water, and then you put on the mask and you're like, so we're just kind of going out and looking around a little bit. But then you get the snorkel and you can stay under a little while longer. But once you put the scuba gear on, then you can go down deeper. And the more you get trained, you can go even deeper. Then you can get in a submarine and you can go right down. So we're just trying to get you guys trained up to dive into the Bhagavad Gita and swim around and really like, wow, this is good. Come out, you're like, yes. Okay, maybe not. Maybe you're like, yeah, good, let's go to bed. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, I guess we can hand it over to Vrishni, our angelic singer.
I have to say, my curiosity to know what happened to Arjun.
Yes, Arjun.
I'll be frank with you. At this point, that scene, that image of the two of them in the center of the battlefield, it made me think that I might be wrong, but what came up to me was we have a choice to make, and which is whether go to the forest, like avoidance, running away, and just be by ourselves so we don't have to upset anyone or be burdened for anyone, or we have the choice to fight back. Maybe fight back is not literally like fighting or hurting people, you know, but maybe fighting is finding the courage to stay and deal with things, you know. I think sometimes it's not really, and then I connected to the phrase of lesson 1, which is, I think it's a skill that we all can develop, you know, to be able to tolerate other situations that can provoke us. So I thought maybe that provocation, for example, in that scene was maybe his other family members, maybe people are upset with him, but the fact that he can't face them, it made me think, is it really them or himself, you know? Because I think us human beings, and I speak for myself as well, and a lot of people I see around me, is that most of the time people avoid or they don't talk about things because it's difficult for them. I think one of the hardest things to do is actually face ourselves. I don't know if I just wanted, to share and leave that here.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's it. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Very nice.
Yeah.
explanation. And it's true, and that's how it relates to us.
It's
So,
hard, and I think it comes with a lot of developing higher self-awareness, you know. And I think it's not easy, and I think a lot of people, especially maybe they don't know it because they've never had a guidance, or simply I see a lot of people, for example, what's going on in the world now. Especially with some of my loved ones, it's amazing how people start living with fear, you know, and then when you end the session talking about being tolerant, I do become a bit frustrated when I try to speak to people or try to guide them or try to explain to them or try to find different ways how to, you know, help to see things differently. But it all comes down in the end to us when we are ready, or when we decide, I guess, to open, to learn, to listen, you know. Yeah. Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That night you spent in the forest with those monks, man, that was awesome.
That was a long time ago, my goodness.
We're gonna
Very long time ago.
Beautiful reflection.
monk night. That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys think. I mean, this has been, let's say, quite recent experiences that I've been, and my own self-reflections. I think it was kind of meant to join today because, you know, I think this self-isolation period is also, you know, making us maybe be more aware of what's happening. And
Yeah.
It's giving us more time to reflect on everything. I feel like
Exactly.
because in everyday life we're so busy with, you know, university work, you don't have time to sit and really think about what's happening in your life. But lockdown gives you a lot of time to do that. But yeah,
We're
I think
actually
a lot of people made big decisions during lockdown. Oh, sorry, I didn't.
sorry.
Who was speaking? Someone said make decisions. Lockdown?
Yeah, I think it was during lockdown. A lot of people, like Vishal said, that they had the time to reflect, to stop, because your life kind of stopped. Even though you're still working from home sometimes or study, but you stop and reflect, and big decisions were made. I know from friends and for myself, and I think decisions I wouldn't have made if it wasn't for lockdown, if I hadn't stopped and reflected. So I think it's always there's always the good side of it somehow. I try to see it this way.
I think you said the main key. Yes, I think lockdown in a way forces life in general and ourselves to stop. But I think it's us, because we can be in lockdown and we can still choose to avoid and occupy with, you know, easy things. But I think it comes down to decision, as you said. Okay, nothing is happening. What am I deciding to do with my time? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think somehow it forced a lot of people to actually spend time with themselves. You know, something that I don't know how long I didn't like actually stopped and thought about and put my life in perspective, you know, and evaluated everything and actually spent time with myself and just enjoyed my own company, you know, and actually thought like where I want to go from, you know, what I want to achieve from now on. I think it actually made everybody think it's a tragedy, honestly. But somehow it came up with some good out of it.
That saying, every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah.
We have to be trying to see that. And that's something that Arjuna will have to do also. He'll have to look for what is the good that's meant to come out of this situation, and what am I meant to learn? What lesson is there for me to learn, and how can I grow? In this situation? because really all these situations that we face in life, we all face different ones according to our level of progress. And when we come to a new situation, the quicker that we can get off of whatever the mental and emotional thing is and try to understand, okay, somehow I've come here for a purpose. Let me learn the lesson I need to learn. Then the quicker we make progress. But the more we get caught up in all the mental jargon, we get stopped because of this, and oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, this happened to me in the past, or I'm afraid of this, all of these things. Not to say they're invalid, but they're stumbling blocks on the path of progress, and we have to be able to cut through those things and try to understand the essence of what we're dealing with and who we are and what we're here for, like that. Yeah, really, really nice sharing. I'm really inspired. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Yes, we're very happy to have you back.
Yeah.
Bye.
Happy to be with all of you. Thank you. So I may go ahead and go if that's okay, Vrishni. Will you mind?
That's okay. But before you go, can we take a quick group picture? Our tradition.
You want me-
Sort out my hair.
Yeah, you know.
Rough.
Wait.
So yeah.
Who's gonna take the picture? 'Cause I don't know how to do it on the thing.
Vishal, can you do it? If not, I can just do a screenshot.
Yeah.
I'm just practicing how I'm going to do it. I want to be smiling in the picture as well. Oh, I need to close all this on the side.
I'll hold up as I face the picture. Okay, everybody. Oh, there's Varsha.
We're all here now. Oh, wait, my wrong screen.
Just on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Well, who took that one? That wasn't me.
I did.
One more. Let's go. Smile. Right. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Lovely.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye, Jai. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so next week we're actually having a yoga session with Amanda. And then we'll be with you the week after on the 29th.
Great. Amanda is my yoga guru, so I hope you have a Thank you very much. Good evening. Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care.